Looks good.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. And that means it's time to get your cup of coffee or your tea. Tam's got her water. Sit back and let's chat about what is happening in the sky above us. And of course, you can see my right hand girl is Tam Veilleux of the Energy Almanac. That must mean we're looking ahead at the month in front of us, April. Can you believe it?
Oh my gosh. Every
Oh,
time we do this call, I'm like, how did that month just blow by? But I have two words for you about March.
what?
Few. Is that two words? No, it's one. Few. Whew.
Oh, phew. I was like, phew, what?
Few. Phew. Like, wow, what a ride. I don't know about
Yeah,
your life and your friends and your family. Wow, it was interesting.
it has been a wild ride, but I look at that as we knew this going in. This is why you and I have this chat because then everybody's forewarned and forearmed, and
That's right.
and we have this idea of this notion of what's to come.
Mhm.
And looking back, I see so many things that were possibilities for change and
Yes.
transformation, things that are going on, and things that came up out of the blue, like not like I ended up finding I got an email from someone about a human design program that I could put on my computer and that would save me from doing people's charts. They could self-serve. And I was like, "Oh my god, that would save me an hour at least a day because it takes me that long to put together the charts and the reports and to email them out to the person and then respond when they, tell me they didn't receive their report." All of that. And not that I want to be lazy and not do those things, but how amazing that I could just put it on my website and people could do it themselves. And
Yeah.
then I went ahead and I did it. I
Wow.
got it on my website. So people are now generating their own human design charts and reports for themselves, and they're able to save them and print them. It's amazing to me.
Wow.
Yeah. But I didn't see that coming.
Nope. Didn't see it
If
coming.
you had told me on March 1st that I was going to be doing something like that, I would have said, "Uh huh, sure." So, good things, right? There are some really positive
Oh,
things.
for
There's also
sure.
some, not so fun things that have been going on for people.
I will say
Even in my
this.
own life, surprises and shocks that were like, what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Have you noticed during this month of March that you became more intuitive or more in
Oh,
tune?
yes. Yes, I can think it and know it, and an hour later the proof shows up. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It
It's
it's amazing, and it comes in such, waves, I would say. So, for example, Monday morning, I was interviewing a friend of mine who's a medium and on my broadcast, and we were talking about times in our lives where just some kind of knowingness comes over you, or a feeling in your body that something's off or something's wrong,
mhm.
and, then finding out, truly your body was telling you, preparing you for something. And, so she had had that experience and what have you. So then we get done with our chat, and all of a sudden, at about, I guess it was, so my show's usually done 9 o'clock my time. So it was probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock. I got this panicked feeling in my stomach, just in my whole core.
Yep.
And I remembered that feeling. It's been at times when someone has passed away or when something major is going on with someone, and I sat with that for a while trying to tune in. Where's it coming from? Where's it coming from? Didn't know where it was coming from. Couldn't tune into that part. But I sent a text real quick to my daughter and said, "Is everybody okay?" Yeah, because I have this real panicked, emotional feeling. I don't know where it's coming from. And so she said, "Yeah, we're all fine." And it was so bad, Tam. I couldn't stand it. I got up and I went out, took the trash out, took the recycling out, did everything I could just to get myself mixed up. Came in and found out that my daughter-in-law's niece had committed suicide. Now, why would I, and that was the other thing we were talking about. Why would I tune into some random thing? I mean,
Wow.
obviously she's family,
Yeah.
but not, close family. And then I hit it upon something. My son's reaction to that suicide would have
Oh,
probably been something similar to when our son, his brother, had committed suicide, and that's the
Sure.
feeling I tapped into.
Okay.
Now, I don't do that all the time, but it seems like this whole month it's been tuned in, tapped
Mhm.
in to these kinds of things. Not always that drastic either, but just yeah, okay, I'm going to follow that link and yeah, oh wow, look what this leads me to.
You are going to attribute it to the Pisces energy where we're really just more aligned with source information. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree with you. I mean, I haven't had something as strong as that. I will say the same thing though. Each time I've had a family member pass, I literally get the message, like in my ear. It's very,
Yeah, it
yeah,
starts to happen enough that you go, "Oh,
yeah,
well," and it doesn't always have to be about someone's passing, but it can be, someone's in trouble or
yeah.
someone's having a bad day, that kind of thing. But your body is such a great barometer
Oh,
especially when we have planetary energies like we have now,
yes,
and even Pluto moving into Aquarius is not without divinatory skills, right? Aquarius is the sign of divination.
yes,
And I think of divination, of course, as astrology or cards or tarot or any of the kinds of things, but it's also tuning in psychically,
right.
right? Being able to see or read the energy fields. So, for those of you listening out there this morning, if you're noticing that you're more tuned in, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Now, tell me what you think of us looking down now at April. What is your first thoughts about April as we start to move forward there?
Well, as I said, phew, March is over. It's like, here comes April. I feel like it's a much softer, more grounded energy coming
Mm.
in. I feel that way. Particularly like I'm always looking at the Mercury. I don't know why that's my thing, but I really like looking at
It
how.
rules your sign.
Oh well, yeah, it does. My moon is in Mercury. That I mean, sorry, rules my sun, which is Virgo. I was thinking about Taurus energy, which is so earthy and grounded, and Mercury is going into Taurus, which is my moon
Mhm.
sign. But I just think that will bring us a nicer communication.
Definitely softening things up a little,
Yeah, yeah. The whole thing
sweetening it
about
up
Mars leaving Gemini, which happened in is happening. It
it
happened a couple days
on the
ago.
25th.
Yeah, like, having that be softer, because Gemini being social and witty and intelligent and talkative and all of that, language oriented, I just feel like there's been such a energy in the air, and so I'm really looking forward to slowing our thought processes and, just sort of grounding ourselves in April, especially after the watery ride we took in
Yeah,
last month, right?
yeah,
So,
the White Rapids.
yeah. Right off the bat, I have it as April 3rd that Mercury slides into Taurus
Mhm.
and squares Pluto.
Right away, like, right that day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right that day. And like I'm looking at it, so I don't know if you're watching the geopolitical scene and the financial markets, but there's a lot going on in the financial markets, and I keep thinking, what might happen between now, today is March 29th, and April 3rd, 4th, where we have a lot to talk about financially. Pluto in Aquarius squaring Mercury in Taurus, right? Are
Yep.
we going to be talking about the financial markets? Pluto with groups and change, transformation, and the markets are doing their thing right now. The banking system is all up in arms, the stock markets, the current foreign currency exchanges. Watching that is wow, like that's like every day I have to tune in and watch what's going on in the foreign currency exchange. So I don't know. Like, I'm just really, I'm very curious about the geopolitical landscape. So for me, I'm all eyes on that right now.
Yeah, the geopolitical landscape, of course, being more affected by Pluto than Mercury.
Sure.
But as
Yes.
every inner planet comes through and makes some kind of connection to Pluto, or even Saturn or Jupiter or anything like that, that's when it starts to come into us personally, right?
Right.
Where then we end up having to do something or a communication with Mercury about your own financial
Right.
tools and your situation. So.
Yeah.
it's a possibility that we're going to, especially because now Venus has been in Taurus. She's moving out of Taurus on April 10th, but she'll be in Taurus as well.
Yep.
She's the ruler of Taurus, plus she rules finances and banking and all
Right.
of that. So it's definitely up in the air at the moment.
Sure.
And I think you're going to see for a while, until June 11th, likely, we're going to see things ease a little bit financially. And I'm using that word because I don't know another word to use, where we may still be experiencing a little bit of the up and down, but it's not going to be as difficult
Mm.
as it will be after June.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if that has more to do with the nodes shifting. Well, they're shifting in July, but shifting into Aries Libra,
Mhm.
or if that's got more to do with Pluto retrograding at that point and going backward to
Mm.
Capricorn. But one way or another, we're not done with that. And we're going to see more about that financial, you know, raising of interest rates, which then have an unintended consequence on the banks and all
Mhm.
of that. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
ugh,
Interesting. I just think, next week, what are we going to be talking about? It's going to be very interesting. That's my first thing that I was looking at, of course.
yeah, that's a good thing to look at. But then, you're also looking next week at a full moon.
Yes, yes, on the 6th.
Which it's been kind of funny because I like to watch how the moons move,
Mm.
and a lot of times the beginning of the month, you'll have the new moon followed by the full moon, so it feels like it's a natural order, the way
Right.
things are going, but lately, the full moons have been the first things in the month
Yes.
to talk about, so we're talking about completions or revelations or, moving things forward, in some way, the light shining, down on something. So at the beginning of the month, and that also happens to be a day where Mercury is involved, but this time with Saturn
Right.
in a sextile. So good one,
Right.
right? So again, do we hear positive financial news?
Yeah.
Right? Maybe,
Sounds good.
right? I mean, or at least neutral-ish,
At
right?
least
Not necessarily finding out that inflation hijacked, or more banks are failing. It's like a uh, the middle of the road financial
well,
kind of feel.
look, it's in Libra, right?
Yeah,
Balance.
balance,
So I
harmony.
think I'm think that one could be a nice one. Hopefully. Uh, I have
We
that as April 6th. I have it at 12:35 in the morning.
Yeah, I have it at the same time, April 6th at 0:35 AM, which just
Mhm.
means and that because I set the full moon and new moon charts for Washington, DC, the capital of the
Yes.
USA. And then, of course, it also shows you the universal time, UTC, which would be 4:35 AM. And interesting, I always like to go to my astrological mandala. You can do it in the Sabian symbols or anything. It's all based on the Sabian symbols.
Yep.
And it says, "A retired sea captain watches ships entering and leaving the harbor." And so the idea of these symbols, right, of these degrees of the zodiac is to sit with what the symbol might be that what does that conjure up for you? A
Hmm.
retired sea captain watches ships entering and leaving the harbor. So, is it possible there's sort of this nostalgia that is around this moon, right? As a retired man always out at sea, having to deal with chaos and the turbulence of the oceans, of life in general. But now he's getting to sit back and just watch as other, maybe younger captains are going out to sea. So it feels like maybe we can gain some objectivity during this full moon about our own past experiences and
Interesting.
how that turbulence in our life or our chaotic moments in our life have led us to the place of wisdom that we have now, no matter what age you are. You don't have to be old, a retiree, in order to have gained wisdom. But what wisdom have we gained from the previous time of craziness?
Mm,
Crazy?
mm.
Different brands of crazy?
When you spoke it, and those mandala analogies, they really slow me down. I have to really think and what is
Yeah.
going on when they say that. And so the wisdom came up right away. Like, this is about somebody, he's got all those years of experience and the wisdom, but I immediately saw balance. One comes in and one goes out.
Yeah,
One
there's that,
comes in, one
or a calming. of everything, right? A
It's
calming
in
down of
balance.
the
It's in
mind.
perfect balance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, calming. I'll take
So
it. We're due.
we're due, right? We're due. But it's also maybe the intake, the respite before some more crazy happens because April, we're also looking at an eclipse down the line here.
Right.
Mercury's retrograde, and we'll have some other kinds of chaos, not March level chaos,
Right, right,
but April level chaos, and and that this is maybe the calm, the place to gather, to integrate, to find yourself in that balance and harmony, necessary in order to go forth into more turbulent waters, if you will,
right.
although not as turbulent as March, um, and to be able to have that viewpoint of all of this makes sense, right? It's going somewhere, it's taking me somewhere.
The wise old sea captain. If you can keep your wisdom with you,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, keep
that
your
will.
wisdom. No matter how old you are, you might be, watching this and you're in your 20s or your 30s and you're feeling like, well, I'm not so wise. But compare yourself then to where you were in your teens.
Mhm.
And you'll see that you may not have the wisdom of someone, in their 60s or 70s, but you certainly have gathered wisdom. So what is that wisdom leading you to? And calling it up and being able to utilize it on your next steps.
Mhm.
So
You
that full moon, it's also interesting because if you look at the full moon chart, can you guys
Yep,
see that?
that's beautiful.
Um, let's go in here. We still have a preponderance of planets in Aries and Taurus.
A preponderance, do we ever?
Do
Holy
we? Right?
shit, yeah.
And in this full moon, the full moon is holding kind of the handle of the bucket, if you will, right?
Mhm.
You want me to show you again? I should have put it so I could. There we go. So the moon is kind of holding the handle of the Aries Taurus planets.
Mhm.
So, what you could say then is that it's the moon, the full moon, the light of the moon that is holding the balance for Aries and Taurus energies and all of the experiences that we've had. Remember, Aries is where we've been planting the seeds for what comes next, and in Taurus begin the culmination or the cultivation, excuse me, of those seeds. And what does that mean, right? What do we have to allow to grow and expand. And at the full moon, Mercury, the North Node, Uranus, and Venus are all in Taurus. And this is just
Wow,
next week. This is just
wow.
next week, right?
Yeah, yeah.
While the Sun, Chiron, Jupiter, and Eris are all still in Aries.
Mhm.
So we're still working with the new beginnings. We're still planting some seeds, but we are also having to cultivate the ones that have already been planted and see like what's coming to the surface. It's kind of fun to look at it that way.
Yeah. In the
Yeah.
springtime, no less.
And what?
In the springtime, no less.
Yeah, at least for us in the northern hemisphere, it's a time, all the bulbs are starting to pop up from the soil, and it's, you I heard frogs the other night.
Oh, you're lucky. I haven't heard that yet.
Yeah, I my daughter lives by a golf course that has a lake or a big pond. So she would take her phone out at night and I could hear all these frogs.
Love
It was
that.
wonderful. And so I'd open my window and go, "Nope, I don't hear them yet." But the other night I opened my window and there they were, just this
Mm,
chorus of beautiful frogs.
I love peepers, right?
Yeah, oh my gosh, they are just so loud,
Oh, yeah.
right?
I love it.
Um, but the temperature has to be at a certain level, I think, for them to really, be comfortable coming out. So that's one thing I always look forward to. That and the smell of the flowers at night when you go outside after
Oh,
the sun of the day. So things to look forward to in April.
yes, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about the 7th. Now you probably have lots of different things going on that day. I do too, but that's the day that Mercury enters into the shadow of
Oh,
the
yeah.
next retrograde period.
Yep.
And the next retrograde period will be from 15 Taurus backward to 5 Taurus. So
Mhm.
as soon as Mercury hits 5 degrees Taurus, that's when we start the shadow. So
Yep.
that happens on the 7th. And it's interesting because to me, and maybe because I have Mercury retrograde in my own chart, it's the shadows that always get me,
Me
right?
too. Yes, they're powerful.
and then the Mercury retrograde itself is like, "Oh, okay, things smooth out." And then the next shadow hits, the after retrograde shadow, the retro shade,
Mhm,
as one of my listeners used to always say, and then things get wonky again.
mhm,
Now, Mercury retrograde in Taurus, do we start to see some kind of reversals in the economic picture, right? What looked rosy over here,
mhm,
now maybe numbers start to come in because it should be first quarter numbers from companies coming out, right?
mm,
Because January, February, March, the
okay,
first quarter is done of the year. So
mhm,
it'll be interesting to see if that plays out. Do we have a change in heart around how we build things or how we interact with nature?
mhm,
Um, I noticed here in the US, there's a lot going on environmentally. This is a month where we bring environmental concerns to the surface,
mhm,
with people considering the powers that be considering whether to relax environmental laws or enact some more stringent laws.
mhm.
It's kind of interesting to watch that happen.
Sure, interesting. I hadn't even connected it to the Taurus. You're right. That
Yeah,
makes
Taurus, the land, right? The
sense.
the
Land,
the
right?
earth itself, and
Perfect.
even though we have the ruling planet of Taurus as Venus, what we're really seeing is a sign that's very practical,
Yep.
grounded,
Yes.
earthy,
Yep.
right?
Right, right, right.
And
I
is it
also
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I would bring the whole Mercury retrograde in Taurus closer to home with like, okay, we're gonna look at the budget again. Like we're
Yes.
just going to, and then like more emotionally personal, like let's really look at self-worth issues. This is the time to work those things out. The coach in me would say, like, this is the one we're gonna do that kind of work.
Yeah. Value, right? What do we
Self-value,
value?
self-value. Yep.
What are we valuing? What do we say we value? And then how do we behave
How to,
around what
right.
we value? Are
Yeah.
we walking our talk that way?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And I want to see really quickly where Ceres is at the moment because she's in at the full moon. So I have that chart. She's in Virgo at the end of Virgo and 26 degrees 58 minutes. So she's also in an earth sign. So
Mhm.
the concerns that we have around lax environmental laws, what does that impact us?
Yep.
How does that impact us? I noticed, what was it? I think it was Biden signed something that the protecting the Arctic from oil drilling.
Oh, okay.
Or some, next level thing, because I know that's already been a thing. Maybe he was extending the protections, I don't know. But, those kinds of things. Are we really going to do things like that that are protective
Mhm.
of environments that are disturbed easily by human activity. So we have that going on. But that day is also a day for the inner planets to be doing a dance. They're dancing all around each other here with, let's see, it's Venus that's in a sextile to Neptune. So when we have planets like that are pairs, Venus and Neptune are pairs, not pears like you eat, but pairs, Pairs. That
I knew.
the Venus like love, and more of the physical human love, that affection, that kind of thing, and Neptune, which is more of the unconditional or universal love. So we're bringing love together that day. I love that. In a sextile, which means we're seeing how we can use those two energies, and
Yep.
then Mercury in a sextile to Mars. I'm not sure what I think about that.
Uh, Mercury in a sextile, and Mars is in Cancer.
Correct, and Mercury would be in Taurus. So the sextile means they're talking a similar language.
To me, they're talking about home life. They're talking.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
home and family and what
And
our
it's Easter,
structures and
right?
forms
Isn't that
are.
Easter Sunday?
Yeah, that would be on Friday, Good Friday. But
Okay,
that,
Good Friday.
beginning that weekend,
Easter
that Easter
weekend.
weekend.
Okay,
Yeah.
Easter weekend. Interesting.
Mm. Yeah, it is interesting because, Mercury and Mars, they work well together. But think about this. Mercury is all about communication. Mars is going to, speak first, think later.
Yep,
But
yep,
when they're working together, then maybe we're able to speak in a way that people can understand us,
sure.
or we're able to kind of get right to the point
Mhm,
when we're talking about a subject or we're
mhm,
talking about people, that kind of thing.
mhm.
So. Let's say good morning real quickly to people because I know I haven't done that yet this morning. The
Yes.
first person I saw out there was Irene from Sweden. Hello, everybody. Leilani, hello to you. Kathleen Mallory, good morning. Gayla, hello. She says, hi, Galactic Souls. I love that.
Hi.
Christine Buckingham, good morning to you. And thank you for those thoughts, Christine. Day, good for you. I'm glad to see you here. Cheryl Yamamoto, good morning. Debbie Tibbetts Tumiel, good morning. Christine says maybe protective regulations will be reinstated to protect consumers, hopefully. And Christine also said this is an interesting term. I think she was talking about our wisdom from the full moon,
Mm.
safe harbor, maybe. Mm,
Oh,
mm,
yeah.
mhm.
Okay.
Safe harbor. I love that. So, good morning to all of you who are listening live and all of you who will listen later. We welcome you.
Mhm.
This is a time when Tam and I get together each month. Well, we're getting together today because the next Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month would be the 5th. And so you'd already missed 5 days worth of knowledge about April.
Yes.
So we meet either the last Wednesday of the month or the first Wednesday of the month to talk about what is coming up for the next month.
Yep.
All right. Let's go to I have something for from Human Design
Oh,
on
good.
the 8th.
On the 8th.
On
Okay.
the 8th, which is the Saturday before Easter. And this is a time where Jupiter is changing the gate that he is at. Now, he is sitting at the gate 51 in our human design charts, which is a gate called shock. And
Yes.
it's a time when things will act to awaken us in some way. And it's not always punitive type of shock where, something happens bad. It could be good things. It could be, a lotto win. It could be, lots of different good things as well. But it's usually something that is awakening us. And in this case, Jupiter awakening us in order to evolve or grow in our consciousness or in our wisdom, right? Evolving our wisdom. Now, on the 8th, Jupiter will switch from the 51 into the 42. Now, the 42 is on the sacral center. So it's the second one up from the bottom. And the sacral center there is about completion. And
Mm,
in fact, we call that gate the gate of celebration and celebration of a completion.
mm,
I often think of that gate as the celebration when we have persevered through something,
mm.
when we've stuck with something, even while it seemed like things were going to fall apart or chaos was going to, reign supreme. So, celebration. So, for the next few weeks, from April 8th until almost May 1st, I think it is, Jupiter is going to be helping us to celebrate or to bring something into completion. Right, that's
Mhm.
the whole idea. In, human design, we talk about people who have the gate 42, as being able to come in at any point in let's say you have a timeline or a linear project, right? Someone with a 42 can come in at any point in the project and bring it to completion,
Wow.
right? That's their gift kind of to be able to see like come in and say, "Okay, you've taken it this far and I'm going to come in and I'm going to clean it up and I'm going to push it further." And I think about like the energy almanac, right? We all do the writing and then Tam comes in and she does her cleanup first, but then she sends it to an editor who takes it to the next step and then that kind of thing. So someone that is able to come in mid-level and finish.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's kind of exciting. I thought it'd go from gate 51 right up to like gate 52, but it doesn't. It goes from
No, that it doesn't work that way because we're moving through signs,
yeah.
right? Because if we are going to equate Jupiter at gate 42, then we're saying that Jupiter's in Aries, right? So 42 is an Aries gate.
Oh, okay.
So we're not moving from gate 1 to gate 64.
Okay.
We're hopscotching based on the astrology
Okay.
of the wheel. That's a deeper conversation that,
Sure. Yeah.
but what we do see is, Jupiter was at 51, which was on the ego, heart center, will center, whichever one you want to use, helping us to awaken to what's really true for us from the heart
Mhm.
and then jumps to 42 as a way for us then to do completion steps. What do we need to do to get to the celebration? Right? How do we get to the ending? So it'll be interesting.
Yes.
Um, And that's all I have for that day. There's really, I mean, the moon is in Scorpio that day. The moon is in Scorpio early on Easter morning, transitioning to Sagittarius. But again, no major aspects going on.
Isn't that interesting on Easter when you
Uh-huh.
say it like that? Like Scorpio, transformation, birth to death, right? Or death to birth, however you want to say that. And you think about
Regeneration,
the rise,
resurrection.
resurrection, that's what I'm getting to. And then Sagittarius, faith and higher ideals on Easter.
Right.
That's
On
pretty
Easter.
remarkable.
Yeah, with
Wow.
no intervening transits from as far as, the planets kicking up dirt, kicking up a fuss. So it should be an interesting weekend. And then the very next day, the 10th, Venus moves into Gemini.
Yes.
And of course, Gemini having been where Mercury or Mars had spent so much time.
Right.
So she comes through here now. And do we begin to converse with one another in a more, is it nicer, kinder, gentler?
Right.
Yeah.
More balanced, considering how Mars and Gemini just rocked everybody's world, I think. You
Yeah,
know,
and in some ways people were empowered to just say whatever they wanted to
right.
say.
It was kind of ugly. Yeah, I felt
Yeah.
like everywhere I look, like people are just holy mo I want to say like, zip
Or
it.
like, think about what you're saying before you say what you're gonna say. But that's over now, thankfully. And
Thank
now
God.
Venus coming
Yes.
through, she will hopefully beautify words.
Well, right. So doesn't that make sense? She comes in and she's like doing cleanup.
That's yeah, batting cleanup after Mars,
She's
right?
cleaning up the house after Mars kinda left his little debris. She'll come in and do that. I'm curious on your take of what Venus in Gemini will do for, like, learning and education. Like, how's it gonna affect that part of us personally?
Well, it could certainly you may start to see things about education, right? It's the time of the year, I think, when kids are doing their state tests.
Mhm.
And there may be people out there who are starting conversations already about the next school year
True.
and what are our teaching ideals for the next year.
Mhm.
And face it, the education system needs an overhaul, right? It needs
Absolutely.
an overhaul. And
Yes.
I've been really concerned about schools, especially like I think it's been Florida mostly that I've heard this about, where they're censoring specific books or education subjects and kind of tying teachers' hands about how they can speak to certain subjects. And that really bothers me, right? Because kids need a more rounded viewpoint, not just this one, based on Christian ideology kind of ideas. And that's something I think that education is going to have to take up. And again, because it's Venus and Gemini, Gemini kind of rules that lower educational system.
Sure.
Venus ruling our values. What do we value?
Right. Right.
Mm. You
Yeah.
can't say you value education while you're burning books because you don't want kids to read them or banning, teachers from talking about whatever it is that you're banning them from, um, and still call yourself an educator.
Well,
They're incongruent. So
they they're incongruent. I like that.
they just don't work.
I
So
think we all get to take a much bigger look at that next year. But
yeah.
for now, that's
Age
like
appropriate too. I mean, that's another thing, right? Do we really have to teach sex education to a 6-year-old? I don't know. Maybe we do in some ways because they're the ones that are often being sexually abused or molested. I mean, it's crazy to think about that, but maybe we need to empower them younger.
I think we can empower them without having to talk about sex education, but that's just
It-
my point of view.
but not talking about the
Yeah.
specifics, maybe, but those subjects are something that they've been loath to talk about, and yet we gotta do something about it, so
We
and
do.
it's not just that, it's history. Can we teach history in a different way?
So this is interesting. We're talking about Venus in Gemini, and
Mhm.
on I think 10th, it also trines Pluto and Aquarius.
Yeah, I have that on the 11th, but
A
yeah,
lot
right in there,
right
in
in
there, so
there. Yes.
trining a planet that is in a sign that's innovative, right, that's
Yes.
technology-based,
Yep.
that's moving forward into the future, so do the
Mhm.
school systems need an overhaul, of revamp? a resurrection, if you will,
Mhm.
quite possibly, and maybe that's what the conversation is in that period of time.
And Sun conjunct Jupiter, same,
Always a beautiful time, right? When
right?
the sun conjuncts a planet, it starts the whole cycle over again.
Yeah.
So the sun conjuncting Jupiter in the sign of Aries, what's new, right? What's new? What bold moves can we make? What is if how can we go forward, right?
Mhm,
How do we stop stumbling and make some decisions and go forward?
mhm.
That's kind of how I think about that. But it's also it's also at a time I think about it as the 11th, right?
Yeah,
Illumination, the light coming on.
yeah.
That it's at a time when, the sun and Jupiter are in the higher degrees of Aries. And I'm not sure what degree
Oh,
exactly that
yes,
day.
that's right. That's right, it
Yeah.
is. I have
So
it.
we're gathering wisdom, right? We're taking that Aries youthful folly and we're putting it to work in a more mature way. So not just like sowing seeds wildly and crazily, but being more deliberate perhaps in how we're approaching what's going on, what we really want to work on, what's really of most importance.
Jupiter's
Uh,
at 21,
21. So we're just into the third decan
right?
at that time. Yeah. So it makes sense now. That's going to give Aries a very Sagittarius feel.
Mhm.
That's funny, we talked about that this morning
Sure
behind
did.
the scenes, right? I just chose Aries out of all the signs,
Yep.
but it's gonna give it that more philosopher's feel, like, I'm gonna be able to now, be a little more philosophical about
Mhm,
my new beginnings or about where do I wanna use bold energies? Where
mhm.
do I wanna make that next step, that new inroad? So that's a good thing. I like that day.
Yes, I do.
Um, then I don't have anything again until the 14th.
Yeah, I'm actually way down into, like, the I didn't have a lot to talk about in the meat of the month, just the moons and a couple other things.
Yeah, it's another integration time, I think, right?
Yes.
Another integration time. But we do have Venus squaring Saturn on the 14th. On my calendar, my personal calendar, it's red, which tells me it can be a difficult day because of the squares, right? Not only that, but the moon squares Mercury and the moon squares Uranus on that Friday.
Mhm.
So it's a day that there can be some not major big things, but like little backbiting things that
Right.
come up to the
I feel like
surface,
it's the head and the heart almost kind of
right?
eating.
Venus again with Saturn.
Mhm,
Now, it's what's the challenge? How do we actually, move forward and live in alignment with our values?
mhm,
There could be financial difficulties that day,
mhm,
right? That day or right around that day, because Saturn rules institutions like the financial system
mhm.
or the stock market or um, Bitcoin. Those the what did you call it? The foreign currency
Foreign
market.
currency exchange, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, the system, the institution itself,
Mhm,
not necessarily the energy of money, but certainly Venus does. So so we have the energy of money coming into a square with the foundations or the institutions. Squares are challenges. There's weaknesses that are likely going to be exposed
mhm.
or that need to be shored up. Somebody's gaming the system, um, you know,
You think?
yeah. And being exposed for what they're doing, that kind of thing.
Right.
Sort of interesting. But the next week is the big week of the month.
Woo!
Yep. And starting now, I have the eclipse on the 19th for the West Coast and for Hawaii, Alaska, because it's at 9:13 p.m. West Coast time. That means it's going to be at what 6:13, I think, for those in Hawaii and Alaska ish. Right, there's probably a time zone in between I'm missing, but for most people, and well, actually Mountain Time and Central Time, it's going to be on the 19th.
Mhm,
But for East Coast and Universal Time, it's going to be on the 20th.
right.
So April 19th and 20th is the day for the new moon solar eclipse.
Mhm,
Woo! And it's a biggie. That's
mhm,
it's a biggie because, well, for several reasons, but when I look at this is the first. This is the indicator of what comes next, what's changing, because it's the first eclipse in the new signs of Aries and Libra for the it's in Aries actually, but it's It's the first time it's been in Aries in several years, and that is an indication because the nodes are shifting in July.
Mm.
So it's a banner solar eclipse, but a solar eclipse is a new beginning, right?
Yes.
It comes with a new moon.
Amen.
Amen, sister. No.
Boldly we
And
go.
I actually have, here we go. I actually have the chart for that one. And I was really contemplating this one this morning. I don't know why I got into it, but
Oh, go
on
into
the surface, it looks like a boring eclipse. Boring, right? If you look at the Sabian symbol, it
okay.
says a duck pond and its brood.
Oh,
But as you read more about it, it seems to speak to that anytime we want to focus on bringing something new in, we have to actually not just think, we actually have to take action.
yeah.
So it kind of links, this idea, the focus is on bringing form to life, right? Breathing life into it. The duck pond in itself is probably serene and just sitting there, but there's life teeming on the surface of that, life teeming under the surface of that. And it also tends to show us some sort of limits,
Mm,
right? Because the duck pond it's not the ocean,
right,
certainly,
right.
right? And so it kind of felt sort of boring. It's at 29 degrees though. 29 degrees, 50 minutes.
That's what caught my attention. Oh boy, a 29 degree. Hmm.
Yeah. So are we maybe having to contend with limits in a new way? Are we having to contend with not going too far so fast that we miss steps or we lose something in the translation?
Hmm.
I don't know. Because it's a 29 degree, we know it's karmic.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to me because the nodes always move backwards into a sign. They're retrograding. Yet the node itself is still in Taurus. It hasn't moved to
Yes.
Aries yet, but
Right,
the
right.
eclipses happen within 7 degrees of the connection
Mhm.
to the moon, and that drives the eclipse.
Yep.
So while this is a powerful eclipse, we don't yet have the nodes in the same sign. So we're completing lessons on one level,
And start,
Taurus levels,
yeah.
and starting new ones in April, or I mean, in April, in Aries. Um, but we're also having to utilize wisdom because the sun and the earth, or sun and the moon, are at the 29th degree. So we've
Yes.
had the lessons all through Aries.
Right.
So what have we learned, right?
Oh boy.
Um, what have we learned, right? That's the big deal. Now the sun and the moon in human design for that moon is at gate 3. Gate 3 is called the gate of innovation, right?
Okay.
In quantum human design. In traditional human design, we called it the gate of ordering. So it kind of, and in the I Ching, here's where the I Ching and the Sabian symbol kind of match in some ways.
Okay.
The I Ching is called trouble in the beginning or difficulty in the beginning,
Okay.
meaning that anything worthwhile, anything that we're launching, any form that we're trying to bring to life has trouble or difficulty in the beginning, right? You have to stick with it. You have to persevere. You have to keep going with that flow. So I feel like this eclipse is telling us that yes, we have to stick with things. You can't just give up because at first blush or the first try it failed.
Yeah.
So
Stick with
bringing some legs to it, keeping going. Now the earth in an eclipse or in human design, always the earth is the place where there's the difficulty or where the challenge is,
it.
right? It's embedded there because it's where we are living. So if we want to get to the highest energy of innovation, um, we have to deal with the gate 50, which is where the earth is.
Mhm.
And the gate 50 is about nurturing.
Mm.
So, in order to see your innovation or your ideas or your possibilities take flight, you have to stick with them,
Right. Nurture it.
nurture it,
Yeah.
keep going with it. And all of the month of April, I should have said this back at the beginning, all of the month of April, the earth is transiting through the gates that are on the spleen center of the human design chart. And the spleen center's gates, because the spleen is all about time, intuition, and health, but it's also a gate of, or I mean, a center for survival.
Mhm.
So all of the gates there can also double as fear or shadows. So
Mm.
when I'm writing the shadow part of the energy almanac, what I'm tapping into is where's the earth?
Mm.
Because she's going to show us what it is that we have to deal with first to get to where we want to go.
Sure.
So she's going to show us the shortcomings, if you will, or the difficulties there. The difficulty here is going to be about transcending unhealthy obligation,
Mm.
right? Not getting yourself tied up in things that really have no meaning or value or worth for you.
Right.
And then giving the best of yourself while also taking care of yourself.
Oi.
Right? We were talking about, I think it was your brother,
Yeah, my brother. Yeah.
service. Yeah, service, but also all those service planets in the first house. So balancing the self in service. And
Wow.
that is a big theme in this particular eclipse as well. And the fear that we have is that we're going to fail those people that we love, or
Sure.
we're going to fail in our responsibility somehow in our communities, our tribes, or whatever, right? Fear of failing others, which
Mm.
then causes us to do more, to keep doing more, to keep doing more, and it then can turn into what we call smother mothering, right? I'm just so micromanaging every little component because I'm so afraid I'm going to fail you or fail my work or fail my, with
Right.
listeners, whatever. So that at first blush, it seems like, yeah, it's an eclipse and a game changing one at that. And we're going in a new direction, but the new direction might be about letting go of the obligations that are no longer serving you.
Mm.
Ones maybe that you got yourself hitched to because you were feeling like that person might fail if you didn't micromanage them.
Sure. Oh my gosh. I hate it when you're talking directly to me, but you're really talking to the whole audience.
It looks like I'm talking to the audience, but I'm really talking to you.
I'm I'm just joking, but like I hope all of you who are listening are like totally getting where this is happening for you. It's pretty remarkable. Like I'm just sitting here connecting dots as you're talking about that. Like I totally know what's coming at me right now. I totally do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And as I'm fond of saying to everyone out there, while Tam and I are sitting here talking about sort of the global energies or the bigger, wider block of energies, every one of you has Aries somewhere in your chart.
That's what I was going to ask you to bring up. Good.
Yeah. So if you want to take that away, an area of your life that is up for change.
Right.
Where is that?
Right.
Right? That's the key because the area of your life is by the house of the chart.
Hmm.
And that's going to be, there's 12 opportunities here for where it could be in your chart.
Hmm.
In my own chart, that's going to put it in the 10th house,
Hmm.
right? What have I obligated myself to in terms of my career or profession, maybe?
Hmm.
Let's see, if you have a Virgo rise, that's going to put Pisces on the other side. So Aries is on your 8th house, then, right? Of the
No,
whole sign.
no, I'm a Sag rising. It's going to be my
Oh,
fourth house.
your 4th house. So, what obligations do you have at home or for family that are maybe inappropriate or,
Right.
smothering
Did you say
you or
smother bear? I know that you did.
I did. I said smother mothering, but
No, I
smother
know.
bears there.
In my house, we call that smother bear.
Smother bear. Well, and by, I'm not gonna share out loud what's going on, but you've had, obligations that you've had to take on with your family,
Totally.
that, you know
Yeah. Oh, I get it.
yeah.
I
And
think it's
sometimes we take on obligations, and then what happens is we just then naturally take over.
fascinating. Hmm.
That's the thing you want to avoid, right? Putting everything back the way it was as soon as the individuals involved can handle that.
Right.
Instead, you might try to keep control over that because you're afraid maybe that they're going to fail and
Right.
you don't want that.
Right.
Yeah, so having to balance that because yeah, it's not you. The mother you, they're grown kind of thing, right? So
Mhm.
interesting times that we have. And this particular new moon eclipse has Uranus and Mercury in a conjunction.
Mhm.
within 2 degrees of one another. So that's pretty tight. I would say, the
Yes.
power of Uranus with Mercury moving into it. And remember we were talking about pairs like Venus and Neptune.
Right.
Well, Mercury and Uranus are a pair.
Mhm. Higher mind, lower mind.
Correct. Exactly. So we're joining the higher mind and the lower mind at this eclipse to take planned action
Around money.
around money, perhaps,
Money.
around growing or building something, building a business, building a life, building a family, building a
Right.
just
Right.
building, right? Building a building.
Yeah.
But in human design, they're both going to be at the gate two, which is a very creative. It's the most yin chart or chart,
Eight.
the most yin gate of the chart. So it's feminine energy. It's the
Mm,
energy of receiving. It's
mm.
the energy of allowing. So it's an interesting place,
Wow.
allowing for the mind, allowing for the higher mind.
Right.
To build, to take action on something that's being built. Now, that Uranus Mercury connection are sextiling Mars. They're at both, let's see, 15 and 17, and Mars is at 13. I put them together, even though, well, it's still within orb. I think that's still orb, and Mars is at provocation
Mm.
in our human design chart. That's an emotional energy,
Mhm.
or it moves toward emotional energy. It's root center energy. So it's moving outward to gain more emotional equanimity. So we're being provoked to become more spiritual during that moon as well. It's just I feel like it's one that's not just straight lined.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more like it's all over the place.
Very layered, multi-layered. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that might be difficult for people to take in and, see exactly how that might affect them. But I would say for that, just go to Aries. If you can just master the Aries part of your chart,
Yeah.
what house that is in, what planets you have in that house, and where is the sun moon connection happening, then you have an idea of what it is that you're meant to be focusing on right now.
Right.
All
Beautiful.
right, so then the new moon of solar eclipse is followed by the sun moving into Taurus.
Yes, exactly, right? And Mercury retrograding in Taurus the next day, right?
Mhm. Boom, boom, boom.
It's a
So,
lot.
do we see something like this, right? Those seeds
Yeah.
that we've planted, now we're having to move them over to the cultivating of Taurus energy.
Sure.
And then, like I often say this to people, like once you plant a seed, you don't keep digging it up to see if the roots are taking shape yet.
Unless
So
you're me.
or unless you plant it in something where you can see through the dirt. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, sometimes I put like seedling things in water so I can watch to see when the roots are ready so I can plant it. But that's different. So, but if we plant seeds in soil, which is the earth, so the
Mhm.
seeds that things that we want to grow, things that we want to prepare, we plant them in earth,
Mhm.
energy, soil, and we don't keep digging them up.
We don't.
No,
We
they
nurture.
don't grow that way.
Yeah.
Right? We have to nurture them.
Yep.
So we start this whole thing of nurturing, and the sun that day squares Pluto.
Oh. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes, I have that. Yes, the sun
Yes.
squares Pluto, right.
Yeah. So what's the transformation going to be, right? How are we going to move forward with this? It's the first time that the sun will square Pluto in Aquarius,
Mm. Mm.
which is innovation, the
Innovation,
future,
right.
right? And, I can tell you guys from what I've been thinking about, just where my mind has gone lately, is about how do I innovate but also position myself for what people need going down into the
Yes,
future.
right.
And that's an interesting way to look at things. And I noticed it that I was turning my attention that direction just like over the weekend. And I
Mm.
went, oh, that's Aquarius, right? Right. Aquarian energy. We're thinking about the future now and in a powerful way. So, how do we transform? How do we let the seeds that we planted in Aries take shape and form a future orientation for us?
Right.
Yeah, and then Mercury retrogrades just for fun. Yeah. And that'll be on the 21st, actually, at 15 degrees of Taurus, midline Taurus energy, going back to 5 degrees. That 5 degrees Taurus is an interesting number
Oh, yeah?
because there's another eclipse this year at 5 degrees of Taurus.
Oh, right, later in the
Yeah.
year. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's a degree we want to watch out, right, for. Pay attention to what's going on while Mercury is retrograde.
Mhm,
Find Taurus in your chart. It's going to be the next sign over from Aries.
mhm.
And what's going on in that area of your chart is going to be where an eclipse will occur this year,
Right.
and also where you have this Mercury retrograde that slows things down and causes us to really ground in. This is Taurus. This
Right,
isn't Aries energy where Mercury's retrograding.
right.
So, where we have to let the ideas take shape, where we have to let the possibilities grow,
Mhm. Get
take
roots.
shape, get roots. Let them
Yeah.
get roots. All right. What else?
I'm looking at the 23rd, Mercury retrograde sextiles Mars in Cancer.
Interesting because we had Mercury sextiling Mars on the 7th, the day Mercury moved into its shadow.
Oh.
Uh-huh. So now we have another, so we have it's probably going to be a threefer, meaning right when Mercury goes forward, we're going to get it again.
Sure.
That's interesting. So things that happen on the 7th may be something that echoes down through the
On
month of
the
April.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Then the 25th, we have the sun in a sextile to Saturn.
Yeah, I have that.
That's a good day for working, a good day for focusing, a good day for taking the next steps. Even though Mercury's in retrograde, don't let it stop you from whatever it is that you've already had in process
Motion,
and
yeah,
building out the next step.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the last thing I have for the month is Mars in a sextile to Uranus on the
Me too.
29th of April.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yep, me too.
I mean, inspiration galore,
Yeah, I'll take it.
creative inspiration.
Sure.
I'll
Yep,
take that to end a month.
yep, yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, in human design, there are no other big planetary, outer planetary movements. So the outer planets are staying their course in the gates that they're in. Of course, we have the entire month, as I said, with the Earth in the gates of fear. So we're dealing with shadow energy somewhat this month, no matter what.
Yep.
Even if you think, we look at April and it's much less difficult than March was. It still has its moments, however, but
Mhm,
we also have this idea of shadows coming up to the surface, those bubbling up things that might be stopping us from sticking with the seeds that we planted,
mhm.
right? If we've planted seeds, we know we can't keep digging them up to look at the roots,
Nope.
but that doesn't mean that we don't keep watering it and pulling the weeds that might be growing around it or making sure it has enough sun, that kind of thing, right?
Nurture, nurture, nurture. A
Nurture,
very
nurture,
Taurian kind of word. Nurture, nurture, nurture.
nurture, nurture.
Mhm.
And in this case, creativity
Yep.
um, involved with that, letting go of any fears around survival,
Mhm.
right? That's the key. During the last week of the month, well, from April 28th to May 3rd. So we actually go a little bit into May with the last of the shadow energies. So from now until May 3rd, we're dealing with how do we ground in what we want to do, who we
Mhm.
want to be, how do we ground it in, and then also deal with the little shadows and fears that might come up
Mm,
in that process.
mhm. It's, I just think so much. I mean, yeah, there's work to do in April, but it's going to feel, I think, just easier. I think it's more, I don't know, not, the shock. You said we're in a gate of shock, like
Yep.
that gate changing, the Jupiter changing.
Yep.
I think that's going to be super beneficial for us this month coming up. I'm looking forward to a little less shock.
Less shock and awe.
Yep.
Now, I like, the surprising kinds of things, like the, whole idea of being able to put a body graph generator on my website. I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
But then I immediately had to get over the whole technology thing.
Yep.
Like, how am I gonna make that happen? You
People
know,
keep asking me about technology. Do you have thoughts about why it's been so wonky the whole front of the year? It's been really a challenge in many, many ways.
the idea of technology is big right now because of Pluto moving into Aquarius, Saturn having exited Aquarius. And
Oh,
of
right.
course, I think what we see is sort of the pullback and the restructuring maybe of things, systems that weren't quite up to date,
Mm,
that weren't quite
that would
set
make
up,
sense.
maybe put out too quick, put
Sure.
out into the world without real testing.
Yep.
Um, and then we have the blowback from people who are afraid of technology, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of people out there that are afraid of 5G, 4G,
Yep.
computers, technology that's, uh, puts their information out there. And on one hand, we have to protect certain things, right? We have to make sure energetically we're not being bombarded by too much and your information is safe. But on the other hand, there are technologies coming down the pike that are going to be more able to protect us,
Yeah.
like blockchain technologies and things
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
And what comes next? Blockchain is something that's about cryptocurrency at this moment, but the technology is huge for credit card safety, for your
It's
banking
elections.
information. Yeah,
It's elections. There's plenty blockchain
elections.
to do.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
So lots of really good stuff technology wise, but we still have a pretty, oh, dare I say this, an aging population that is a little more difficult for them
Sure.
to get into technology.
Yep.
So
Okay, yeah, I hadn't really even made that connection about the, one planet out, one planet in, both having to do with technology. That makes perfect sense because it really has been a rough 90 days.
yeah, yeah.
Technology's been so clunky, and everybody keeps saying, "Is Mercury retrograde?" And they all keep telling me that. I'm like, "No, no, no, no. There's more to this."
No.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, because you remember Saturn preceded Aquarius energy for
yes,
Pluto. So
yes,
Saturn exposes the weaknesses and um but also the potential.
yeah,
But Pluto's the destroyer,
yeah.
right? He's going to go, "Okay, you got a weakness there. Let's just make it go crash. Let's
Let's
make
fix
it
it.
boom."
Yep,
Yeah.
let's fix it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we'll
What a
have a lot to deal with. It'll
month.
be a great month. I think,
Well,
great. But just remember this, people. We all have ideas and we all have possibilities, but that's where they stay if you don't actually take foot action, like put your feet on the ground and do something with
ground
them.
Yep.
Yeah. So take action on your ideas. What's the worst that can happen?
Hold on. It's a dream without a plan. It's just a wish.
Yes. Or
So,
aim for the stars. The worst that could happen is you'll land
and
amongst the
on the
clouds
moon. Yep.
or on the moon. I don't know. But anyway, so don't be afraid of taking action, but also know that you can't just take action one day
Right.
and think, "Oh, well, that didn't work." Ah,
Yep. No,
see
there's
it
more to
through.
it than that.
Yeah, see it through.
Yeah,
Tam,
that's
thank you so much for being with me this morning. It's always
always a
fun at
pleasure.
the beginning of the new month to be able to talk about that with you. What's new for you? What's going on with you? Anything you want to share before we close today?
This is the week, and I don't have it with me. I'm at my art desk creating art for the 2024 Energy Almanac. I'm working on cover art and interior illustrations. Follow me on Instagram at Tamra
At Tam
Tamra V
Rav.
Tamra dot
Tam
V
Rav. Yeah,
Tamrav.
it's
Yeah,
because I always think it's Tam Rav.
yep. That's how
Uh,
I say it that way, Tamrav. I'm there. Follow the art there. Follow us on Instagram at the Energy Almanac. That's my call to action for this month. I'm creative this week and really month. All
yeah. Yeah,
right.
that me too, because now I'm your clone. I'm following you.
Yeah.
At least in creating stuff like that. All right. Well, thank you so much. You guys all take care. I'll see you Friday morning. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.